Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a fun video. We're going to be discussing my favorite memoirs, autobiographies, biographies, whatever they're classified as. These are some of my favorite celebrities that I read their books and I had the best time, and I think that you should read these too. I think I have 8 books on this list. I definitely recommend the audiobooks. I think I listened to all of these on audio except for maybe 2 of them. I think I had to read the physical books of those. The rest I did on audio, and I definitely recommend audio because you get to listen to them actually talk about it and like their voices telling you the story, and you just feel so much more connected. It's the best. So if you have a chance to listen to the audios, highly recommend it. And we're just going to go ahead and start with my favorite one on this list, and that is Finding Me by Viola Davis. I love Viola Davis. I love her movies. I think she's a fantastic actress, and listening to her share her story growing up, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I loved it so much. I watched How to Get Away with Murder, and she talks about it in this book, and she talks about the hardships that she had of growing up and like just the struggles of it all and her family and school and how she got into the acting business. And her story is so compelling, and like the way that she tells the story, fantastic. And like with her story, she talks a lot about how like she wasn't like the typical beauty standard, and so she had to like make her own way. She didn't really get like those roles that, like Jennifer Aniston, like some pretty blonde, like the typical stereotypical type would get. She had to find different types of roles and really like own them in order to like be seen. And oh, I just love it. I love her story so much. Well, this one really sticks with me. Like I listened to this one a couple of years ago and I still think about her story. So if you like her at all, I'd highly, highly recommend this one. It was so like heartfelt, and like she's so hard nosed. Like she is very direct, and like the facts are the facts, and she's not all about like your feelings or whatever. She just lays it all out there. And oh, it was just like gritty, and she's got a lot of dark history, growing up the way that she did. And oh, so much fun. I really loved it. So this next one is so drastically different from hers, and it is Beyond the Wand: The Magic and the Mayhem of Growing Up a Wizard by Tom Felton. This is the one that really like got me really started on like listening to everybody's, because I just like started binging them after this one, because his story was just so much fun. And it's different because like he didn't grow up the same way that like Viola Davis grew up. He didn't have that same hard childhood, but his was so much fun because you got a lot of like the Harry Potter stuff, and you got a lot of the behind the scenes and him interacting with people, and you're like, oh, I recognize those names. And you got to see more of the Harry Potter world. Like his was mostly focused on that and how that created him and where he went after that, and some of the struggles that he had in adulthood versus a lot of the struggles that he would have had in childhood. Where a lot of these you'll see the struggles in childhood, he had more in adulthood. And he talks a lot about being a child actor and getting his starts and all those things, and him just being a little bit of a hoodlum on the sets of Harry Potter, like, oh, and he talks about how he's very different from Draco and things like that. And I loved his story, and I love listening to the audiobook of this because like he tells the story. So you get to hear Draco Malfoy in your head as you're, well, I guess in your ears, as you're like listening to the story of how he was on set and everything. And it just, oh, I really liked this one. This one was a lot of fun. Very lighthearted, not nearly as like heartbreaking, but definitely a lot of fun. This next one is very heartfelt and very like hard hitting, especially given the time that I read it, because I read it after he passed away. And it is Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. This one hurt so bad. And I listened to a lot of the audiobook. I had the physical book, and so I kind of did like an immersion read because I would listen to some of it because I found it on YouTube. And so it was really slow because that was before I learned how to like speed up YouTube. And so it was really slow. So I would listen to it while I was like doing certain things. But then when I had the time to like actually physically read it, I would physically read it. And oh, it just hurt me. I grew up watching Friends. Like I would be like middle school teenager. I would wake up at 8 a.m. on Saturdays and in the summer to watch Friends. No, I'm probably not even 8. Might have been 8. Might have been 7. It was so early, but I would wake up to watch Friends. Like I quote Friends all the time. I love Friends. It is the show that I know the most. I can't even tell you how often I quote it. It is stupid how much I quote this show. I love all the actors and like I rewatch it all the time. Like I've watched it a ton of times. I'm even currently watching this YouTube channel. They're reacting to it and I'm watching every episode that they do. So I'm a little bit obsessed and it still cracks me up to this day. So when I read this book and hearing his story, it just broke my heart because he talks a lot about like Friends and he talks about his struggle with addiction throughout his time on Friends and even after Friends ended and his struggles with everything and how much it affected him and how much of Friends that he didn't even remember. And he talks a little bit about his childhood and growing up. He was a tennis star. I didn't know that until I read his book. And then I found out that he was a tennis star. And you know how Bruce Willis was in a couple of episodes of Friends? Matthew Perry talks about the bet that had Bruce Willis coming in on Friends for free. So like you just get a lot more of those behind the scenes stories from his life and the career. And this book just meant so much more to me because I grew up watching them. And Chandler is my favorite character. So it absolutely like touched my heart to read it. I listened to the audiobook and he does the audio narration. And so it's just like Chandler in your head. He cusses in this too. And you never hear Chandler cuss. And so it's like really like disorienting to hear Matthew Perry cuss in this audiobook because it's Chandler and Chandler doesn't cuss much in the show. Like I had to like adjust to that. So that was something. But anyways, this next one is another Harry Potter, and that is The Opposite of Butterfly Hunting by Ivana Lynch. This one, she plays Luna Lovegood, and we don't get as much of like the behind the scenes in Harry Potter because this one is more of her struggles with her eating disorder and how she came through that to the other side of that and how Harry Potter saved her life. You start when she's little, like she's like 9, 10, 11. And like this is how everything got started for her. She goes through all kinds of therapies and gets sent off and having to deal with this huge struggle in her life and how it affected her. And she talks a lot about like her recovery and things. And I loved her tone of voice in this because she said right there in like her intro of like, this is a tough story. It's going to be dark. It's going to hurt, but it's the truth. It's not romanticized. It's not clean. Like she's not softening it. That's how to phrase it. She's not softening it for the reader. She's like, this is the real struggle. Like this is how it really happened. And she's did a really good job of not giving like numbers. Like she tried really hard to not give power to the numbers and like, oh, I got down to 87 pounds. No, you don't have a clue what any of her numbers were. You just know she was smaller than she needed to be. And this one, I really enjoyed listening to her struggles and how she was able to like overcome that. And oh, just getting to see, I love vulnerability. And she was definitely vulnerable in this. And she talked about how this affected her family and it talked about how it affected her, her siblings and their relationships with each other and just the gravity of it all. And there is a little bit of Harry Potter in there, which was always fun, but definitely more focused on her story and her struggles with this disorder that she was going through. This next one was definitely pretty popular, pretty well known there for a little while when it first came out. This is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now, I was a little bit older when iCarly and all those things came out. So I didn't really watch iCarly like I knew of it, but I never like watched it. Kind of like same thing with Hannah Montana, where it was like right after I had like aged out of that a little bit, and we didn't have channels when I was a kid, anyways. Not like when I was a kid, but like middle school to high school, we didn't have channels, so I couldn't watch those anyways. So if it didn't come out when I was in like elementary school, I didn't really watch it. But anyways, so I never watched it. I didn't know who Jeanette McCurdy was, didn't know nothing until this book came out, and then I started hearing stuff. Well, it was pretty popular. Everyone seemed to really like it. And I was like, I love listening to people's stories. So I picked it up. And it's definitely pretty hard hitting. She talks a lot about her relationship with her mom. That's the biggest thing, is her relationship with her mom and how her mom treated her growing up, and how her mom essentially encouraged her eating choices and encouraged a lot of her behaviors and encouraged her into the acting world, even though she didn't really care as much as her mom did. And it is really tough to read at points. And like, you as the reader, you read certain things and you're like, she is writing things that are abusive. Like, these things are definitely abuse. And in her brain, as like the child going through these things, she's like, whatever. And you're just like, how did you go through all this? Like, this is wild. And I don't have a clue how much of it got dealt with the court systems or anything. I don't remember if she talked about it. I don't even know that she came out about anything until after her mom died. You know, because once she dies, then don't have to deal with anything. So I don't know. I don't remember. I read this like right when it came out, so it's been a minute. But I do know that a lot of those stories and a lot of those things that she went through in her story have really stuck with me. And if you haven't read this one, then I would definitely recommend it if you can handle reading hard things. Because if you can handle reading hard things, then don't read it, because she went through some stuff. And she talks a lot about how, because of her childhood and how she grew up, the choices that she made in adulthood, and how much those choices affected her. And she really struggled a lot too. And I really like hearing how people come out of struggle, because I'm a therapist, you know, so I believe that people can come through the other side of anything traumatic. You know, I mean, otherwise, why am I here? And so I really believe that people can come through things, and I love seeing stories where they come through things, you know, and I think that may be why I really like Grimdark, because I really like seeing, oh, things can get really bad, but we can get through it, you know. So, anywho, that one was definitely a hard read, but it was definitely compelling. And Jeanette McCurdy did pretty good with like the story structure and stuff. Like, I was never bored at all. I had a good time, as much as you can have a good time with, you know, reading about those kinds of topics. This next one was probably the first memoir, autobiography, whatever, that I ever read. And that was Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. This one I read after I watched Gilmore Girls, probably for the first time. And I just loved Gilmore Girls. And so anything that was Gilmore Girls related, I was going to like snatch that up. So I saw this and I snatched it up pretty quickly. And I had the best time. Lauren Graham, her book read like Lorelai Gilmore. Like, the way that she narrated and the way that she talked to you in the story, it sounded just like Lorelai. And I just loved that so much, because it was, I just love Lorelai. And because of that, this book flew. And you got to hear some stories of the Gilmore Girls and things like that. I feel like there wasn't as much Gilmore Girls as I was hoping, but that might be my feelings about Kelly Bishop's memoir. I don't remember. This one I read probably 10 years ago, roughly. It's been a long time. At least several years. So I may be forgetting, but I definitely remember the tone of the story more than anything, and it definitely sounded like Lorelai. So if you just want more of Lorelai Gilmore and a little sneak peek of Gilmore Girls' world, I highly recommend this one. And this one was one that I didn't do the audiobook for. I physically read this one. So the fact that like I could hear Lorelai is probably based on like the writing structure and like the word choice and like my own brain. So if you do audio for Lauren Grant, it may not sound like Lorelai. I don't know. I just know that was my experience. And then this next one was We're Going to Need More Wine by Gabrielle Union. I grew up watching Gabrielle Union. I loved her in Bring It On. And there's a couple other movies that she's in that I just loved her in. Daddy's Little Girls. She's fantastic in Daddy's Little Girls. And I just love her. I think she is so classy and like so put together. I just love her. But so this one talks a lot about like her childhood and how she grew up in like a white prep school, which is vastly different from like where she was originally. And she kind of had like two separate lives. So she was kind of like having to go in between of like being more like prep school white type versus like where she grew up. And I loved her discussion of like identity and figuring out who you are and where you fit in, especially at like middle school, high school times. That's already so hard. But then when you're living two separate lives, that makes it even harder to know who you are and where you stand in the world. And she would have to act a certain way with the different sets of people. And that made it even harder for her to like figure herself out. And then she talks a little bit about like the acting career and stuff, but a lot of it was like family based and her marriage and her children and things like that. It From what I remember, it's not a ton of like talking about her movies and her acting career and things that she was in. It's mostly like her life versus her projects. So if you like exploration of identity and things like that, this one is probably a good one to check out. And then the last one on this list is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. This one I loved. I love David Goggins. I think he is absolutely wild. He is crazy, okay? And I don't know that people realize how crazy he is until you read his book. That's when I like really understood the depths that he goes to in order to get things done. Like, there's no quitting him at all. And he talks about how like he's an ordinary dude or whatever. Boy, I don't know how ordinary you think you are, but I don't think that you're as ordinary as you think you are, because he does some wild things. Like, I'm like, you're kind of stupid. Like, you're not even like planning well. You're just doing stuff and like not quitting. Like, his biggest thing though is like not quitting. And I think that if you go into it for those things, then it could be pretty inspiring, because I mean, he did come from like a pretty hard childhood, and he came from he has a background of like a lot of disability, like ADHD, reading issues, like all that kind of thing. He was severely overweight and ended up losing a lot of weight and getting in the shape that he's in. And he just like flipped a switch and it's just like, I'm done being who I was. I'm going to be somebody else. And that can be super inspiring. And that's a big part of like why I really like his story, because he completely changed his life. And it was just him making a decision of, I'm going to be different. And that's how it was. And I think that he can encourage people to push beyond what they think are their limits. Now, I do believe that he goes a little too far on some of these things, and you'll have to read his book to like figure out exactly what I mean. So I don't want to like spoil all those stories. But I think that if you're looking at it as far as, I'm not giving all that I have, I'm probably giving 50%, then he can definitely inspire you to go further and go past what you think that you can do, because we tend to just like kind of coast through stuff. And that's kind of his point, is that we coast through things rather than actually like going in full speed and fully committing. And that's why we don't succeed, is because we're just half-assing it, you know? And so I really like his story. I really like reading about people who go and do like extraordinary things, and he's done some extraordinary things. And he's wild. I love his stories. If you just want to hear like some crazy things that he's done, go right ahead, because he's definitely done some things, and a lot of things that I didn't even know he did. But by reading his book, I was like able to find out some things. So it was really cool. I really like him. But yeah, So those are just some of my favorite memoirs. While I was sitting here talking about these, I thought of some others. So there's definitely a ton more. But if you have any that you really loved, let me know in the comments because I love a good memoir. Have you read any of these? Let me know in the comments and I will see you in the next one.